Today I'm reviewing the Clemson-Class Destroyer. The lower tiered ships don't get as much review time as their bigger and badder higher tier sisters, but everyone has to play through them. Might as well know a little bit about them and the Clemson, especially if you haven't started to unlock the US destroyers yet. The first Clemson-Class Destroyer was commissioned in 1919 and would become the most numerous class of destroyers ever produced by the Navy. When production finally ended, a total of 156 ships were set to sea. Of the 156 Clemsons, 20 total would be lost. 7 of the class were lost in California after running aground in foul weather in what became known as the Honda Point disaster of 1923. Although a fair amount of the class were around in World War II, most never saw frontline action, and many were converted for other purposes such as mine layers. 11 would be sunk during World War II, nearly evenly divided between Atlantic and Pacific operations. Easily recognized by its 4 smokestacks, the Clemson featured 4 4-inch guns, 1 3-inch gun for anti-aircraft, and 12 torpedo tubes. The Clemson topped out at about 35.5 knots and was preceded by the Farragut-class destroyer. While not exactly slow, the Tier 4 Clemson isn't exactly the fastest destroyer either. What really kills the maneuverability of it is the decrease in speed that occurs while you're turning. The destroyer drops nearly 10 knots and handles like Jabba the Hutt. This opens the ship up for fairly quick destruction as you become an easy target for any ships in the area. The meager 4-inch guns ensure that you really can't attack ships larger than destroyers in offense or defense. The 12 torpedo tubes on the Clemson almost make up for its piggish handling. Almost. There's a major problem with this though. When attacking enemies, you'll most likely take on an S-shaped maneuver, firing off a salvo of torpedoes from one side, and then turning to the opposite to let loose the remaining salvo. This, in many cases, is a suicide run. One should not use the Clemson expecting to survive the entire battle. In fact, in most of my matches I rarely survive the first encounter, though I did often sink an opponent. The standard lack of US torpedo range all but cripples the Clemson. In order to get within attack range, you must plan a well-choreographed route of attack. Many times, I found myself in a dead stop behind the cover of a land formation, just waiting for an enemy ship to get within 5 clicks to launch my surprise attack. These attacks most always proved fatal. The slow turning speed of the Clemson is not enough to survive the return fire you'll almost certainly encounter. Using the Clemson is basically a one-for-one trade. You're sacrificing your smaller destroyer to take out a cruiser or possibly a battleship. I usually found myself sinking shortly after I let my torpedoes fly. In fact, I'd quite often watch my torpedoes hit as I was sinking. As with most US destroyers, the key to success and survival in the Clemson is to plan your route. Do not go after other destroyers, as any higher tier destroyer will chew you apart. Lay smoke to cover your team, or your own sneak attack. Wait for the enemy to get within 5-kilometer range and snake in with the S-shaped pattern. Let your torpedoes fly, and if you can, snake around to the other side so you can launch more. You can try to get away, and you very well might, but most of the time you will not. Your speed drops too much as you turn. I can't exactly say that the Clemson is a bad ship. It is what it is. It's a lower tier destroyer that you have to slog through to get to a decent destroyer. It shouldn't take too long to rack up the necessary XP to level up, especially if you're scoring those torpedo hits. Just prepare to have a little bit of frustration as your first encounter in battle will likely be your last. All in all, it can be a very fun little ship to use, as most destroyers are. And again, you have a good torpedo setup in it. There is a reason many of these ships didn't see service in World War II. Anyhow, hope you joined the review. I appreciate your time and input, and there will be more of these on the way soon. Zoop out.